Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to initiate and moderate the first academic event on behalf of HRDA. Thank you very much, Dr. Mahesh and team HRDA for giving me this opportunity. So since maybe for the last 1 year, our lives have been rattled by this global pandemic. Personally, socially, culturally, and globally. So even financially or economically also. So after 1 year of suffering, probably our science has come up with solution to this deadly virus. So there is a preparation called vaccination, COVID-19 vaccination. Is it a fast track vaccine? There is a concern regarding this fast track activity. So let's listen from our experts. Safety concerns as well as efficacy concerns of this vaccination and available different vaccines. Today we have two wonderful speakers from our Nizams Institute. One is a participant in these clinical trials. Other is a expert microbiologist who has got interest in virology. Let's hope. So what are the solutions? And let's clear our myths about this vaccination. Now I am introducing the speakers. It's a great pleasure to introduce Dr. C. Prabhakar Reddy sir, who has got his MD degree in pharmacology from SRMC Chennai and DM in clinical pharmacology and therapeutics from Nizams, and who is working currently as associate professor at Department of Clinical Pharmacology and Therapeutics at Nizams since 2017. He has completed various research projects, and probably yesterday or day before yesterday, there is a phase 1 clinical trial of Covaxin is published on his name in the Lancet, prestigious Lancet. He has got various awards and publications. Currently, he is a part of phase 1, 2, 3 of Covaxin manufactured by Bharat Biotech India Limited, Hyderabad. So let's listen from his experience. And next speaker, Dr. Neelima Angali. She has got MD microbiology from Gandhi Medical College. She has vast teaching experience in the last 10 years. She is currently assistant professor in microbiology since 2016, and present field of work is bacteriology, tuberculosis, and she has got special interest in virology. She has got various publications in national and international journals, and she has presented various papers in various conferences. So let's listen from our experts. Now I invite Dr. Prabhakar sir for his lecture on development of vaccines, especially COVID vaccines. Prabhakar sir, over to you. Now I stop sharing.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Raghava, for inviting me and giving this opportunity to, let us say, talk and spread some knowledge about how the vaccine is being developed and how the vaccines that are presently available for usage in for healthcare workers, how they were developed. So now it's a great pleasure for me to share some of the knowledge. So I will be start sharing my presentation. I think it is now visible.
Yes, sir. Just to slideshow, you start slideshow, sir.
Okay. So now I'll be talking about development of COVID vaccination. So just before that, let me just want to say some few words about what is the current status of COVID. This is the current status. We don't know whether we have to put the mask or remove the mask. So until now, we were confident that we should have the mask on. But once vaccination has started, and so much knowledge has developed about COVID, virus, its infection, its pathology, physiology, everything. We don't know to remove the mask. So by seeing this picture, we can't say whether they're removing the mask or putting on the masks. So this is the correct status. So now I'll go into, so initially I have divided my presentation. It's a small presentation of 15 to 16 minutes. So I have divided this presentation into how the vaccines are developed generally. This is the first part. Then now we are in a situation where everybody is scared. As Raghava was telling, we are having so many problems, physiological, psychological, society, economical, everything is a problem now due to pandemic. So how did this pandemic influence the development of vaccination? How did we get the vaccination so fast into the market for COVID? Then I'll be talking, the final part is how the two vaccines that are available for healthcare workers at present in our country, how they were developed. So usually anything, let us say any drug or anything, the vaccine development starts in lab. That is what we call preclinical. Clinical part is that we give for human use. We do the study in humans, but preclinical, it is done in labs where they look into the immunogenic response, mostly antibody titer. How much is the antibody titer formed? What is the seroconversion rate if you are going to give an if you give an vaccine to animals? Then they look mostly into safety. So usually these experiments are done in animals, like mostly New Zealand white rabbits, hamsters, all large animals. They'll be doing these vaccine studies. So they look into the safety. What they look, how the change in body weight is being affected by the vaccine. What happens to food consumption? What is the temperature? What happens to hematological, clinical, biochemistry, urine analysis, organ? All these they'll be looking into the safety parameters. And also most of the vaccines are now given intramuscular or subcutaneous or intradermal. So what happens if you give the vaccine? What is happening microscopically? What is happening macroscopically at the site of injection? This is what they do in preclinical studies. So once the vaccine is found to be validated in preclinical studies, once they come to a conclusion, the vaccine may be effective and it is safe in the humans, they go for clinical studies. Usually for any drug or any vaccine development, we have three types of studies: phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 1 is the first in human studies, where we are going to determine the safety and immunogenicity. This is the first time we are giving in the humans for the vaccine, where we are going to determine the safety and immunogenicity. Here, the route of administration and dose is not perfected. So here we are trying to guess what dose should be administered if it is approved. Then it also, so now whom we are going to give in phase 1? It is for people who are healthy and who are having very less risk. For these people, we are giving phase 1 to test, to determine the safety and immunogenicity. Then we come to phase 2, we come 1 or 2 doses of this one. And here we are going to check safety. So always in clinical trials, safety is the paramount important parameter that as a clinical pharmacologist we are going to see. Safety, safety, safety. The second part is efficacy or effectiveness. So here in phase 2, we are going to look at safety. That's the primary thing. And also the effectiveness. What is the immunogenicity if we give to humans? So here the number of sample size will increase. Then phase 3 is again safety and effectiveness in prevention of disease. So here the volunteers number will be in thousands. And here we have various variables that is going to affect the immunological response from the volunteer. So we are going to have various variables that are being involved. So here we come to phase 3, we get the safety and effectiveness data. Then once we have the safety and effectiveness data, we are going to submit it to the regulatory authorities, who are going to take a call on whether our any vaccine that has been developed through preclinical, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 is good. The safety is good. It has a high benefit over risk ratio. Then they'll start giving approval. So this is a general way that a vaccine or any drug, even in drugs, it is phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. But this is how we have development of this vaccine or a drug. Now, so so what happens is this preliminary stage, non-clinical animals testing stage, this is the place that happens in preclinical stage. So here it usually takes 3 to 7 years, where they are going to identify the antigen and they are going to start development of the vaccine. And once this preliminary stage is crossed over, they come to non-clinical animal testing, where they go for safety and immunogenicity testing. Then once this is over, they come to clinical trial phase 1. Clinical trial phase 1, where they do safety immunogenicity. It usually involves 20 to 100 healthy volunteers. Then they go to phase 3. Again, it is safety immunogenicity, dose finding, several hundreds. Phase 3 is safety immunogenicity, efficacy in thousands of hundreds of healthy volunteers. The interaction between the sponsor or the one who is developing the vaccine starts right from here with the regulatory authorities. So they finish, once we finish these two, they have to take the sponsor or anyone who is developing the vaccine should take approval from the regulatory authorities for phase 1. Once they finish 2, they have to go to phase 3, phase 2. Once they finish phase 2, they go to phase 3. This is the general traditional way of developing a vaccine. So usually it takes around 2, 3 plus 4, 7 years it takes minimum for a vaccine that starts from the lab to licensing for manufacturing, so that it can be administered to humans for general public. So it takes minimum 7 years for the vaccine to get developed. These are general traditional methods. So now what happens is manufacturing. Manufacturing of the vaccine is usually done in small scale when they start preclinical studies. They just want to say, this is for mostly whether the manufacturing process is correct or not. So once they finish phase 2 and they are going through phase 3, they start commercial scale up and process validation. So whether the process of manufacturing that has been started in this time is the same as this one, so that they can get a large scale manufacturing. So to come to a stage where we can give vaccination for general public, it usually takes 7 years in a traditional setup. This is the traditional setup for vaccine development. So now we are in a stage where we don't want to wait 7 years. We don't have time. There is pandemic. People are scared. Public is scared. Government are scared. Whole world is tumbling. So what happens now? Now, this is the traditional one which I was explaining, where it is going to take 7 years. Let us say 1, 3, 5, and this will take at least 2 years. So 7 years it is going to take for a vaccine to come to market in the traditional development. Now, what is happening? We're in a pandemic. Everybody is scared. Government is scared. Economy is out. Everything is upside down. So now we have come to a special way of talking. Let us say it is a SARS-CoV-2 vaccine development. This is a special word, like we say before COVID, how vaccine was developed. That is a traditional method. The new method after COVID is SARS-CoV-2 vaccine development. So this is the terminology given. So here, let us say now we have the process of design and exploratory preclinical studies, process development, preclinical toxicological studies. Usually it takes around 3 to 4 years. So now this has been shortened drastically. It has been completed in months, let us say 1 or 2 months. How did this process of 4 years been completed? So design and exploratory preclinical studies and process development, preclinical toxicological studies, these both studies have taken only months instead of years. So how is it possible? Pre-existing from SARS. So whatever that we have the knowledge of developing a vaccine that is available before, we have used that knowledge. The knowledge that this has been cut short by 2 months because we are using the knowledge that we have already with us. Already the knowledge that is pre-existing we have. That is being used for development of CoV-2 vaccine in lab. So this has been, 4 years has been cut down to months because of the knowledge that we have accumulated in the past in development of vaccine. Next, So usually in traditional way, we have phase 1 followed by phase 2 followed by phase 3. So usually what happens, we have to complete uh, from 1 to Z, A to Z phase 1 before you go to phase 2. We have to complete phase 2 before we go to phase 3. It usually takes 5 to 7 years to do this. To complete phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3, it takes 5 to 7 years. Now, when we come to CO2 vaccine development, it has taken months because phase 1 and phase 2 are overlapped, phase 2 and phase 3 are overlapped. There is overlap. So I complete part of phase 1, I get approval for doing phase 2. Once I complete part of phase 2, I get I get approval for phase 3. So here we are making this clinical trials. In the traditional, it is going to 5 to 7 years. Here we are cutting into months. So here months, here months. So we are able to get from the traditional, let us say 15 years, we have cut down the vaccine development 10 to 1.5 years total. In 10 to 18 months, we were able to get vaccine for SARS-CoV-2 because of so much drastic reduction in the procedural procedures that were taking place for development. So here the most important thing for us to remember is that we have cut down the time that is going to take to do all these things. Because so most of us will be asking a question, is it possible? Yes, it is possible because we have so much data with us. We have so much knowledge in vaccine development where due to the pandemic, it was possible to get a vaccine to the market from this place to this place into the market by 10 to 18 months. So now, so this how we have cut down the vaccine development duration from the traditional, and now we have SARS-CoV vaccine development, which has reduced drastically the time for the vaccine to come to the market. So now when we go to the final part of my discussion, there are two vaccines that are available. Those are, one is the left side, the phase 2-3. It is a observer blind randomized. This is for Covishield. And the other thing, event-driven phase 3 is for Covaxin. Just I wanted to compare the two vaccines, how they have been developed in the Indian market, for the Indian market. Forget about other markets. These were the data that were taken by the Indian government to give approval for marketing authorization in this emergency situation. The phase 2-3 is for Covishield, phase 3 is for Covaxin. So before coming to phase 3, Covaxin has undergone both phase 1 and phase 2 studies in India. And the main difference between this is that Covaxin has been developed fully in-house in India. Covishield is developed in UK and it is being manufactured by Serum Institute. Covishield, the administration, how do we administer both this? Covishield is given on day 1 and 28 as a 0.5 ml intramuscular. Covaxin is given as a 2 doses intramuscular injection 20 days apart. The only the terminology is different, but both are same. So in Covishield and Covaxin, we have a placebo that is administered for 50% of the population. Inclusion criteria is almost same for both the studies. When we come to exclusion criteria, the exclusion criteria for Covishield is acute illness, confirmed laboratory COVID-19 disease, seropositivity, history of currently positive SARS-CoV-2 by RT-PCR. And in Covaxin, there are so many indications that we should avoid this, like we have temperature of more than 38. If they are having in the last 3 days prior to the first dose, we are excluding them. Then residents of COVID-19 infection in the same household, they are being excluded. Known cases of HIV, hepatitis B or hepatitis C are excluded. And recipient of any licensed experimental vaccine within 4 weeks have been excluded. So another important thing in Covaxin is that persons who have received immunoglobulin or other blood products within 3 months before are excluded. And people taking immunosuppression, any drugs or any treatment that is causing immunosuppression are also excluded. Immunoglobulin, CITES, anticoagulation, these all things are excluded into the study while doing Covaxin. So we just remember that the exclusion criteria are so many there. But as the drug, as the Covishield has already undergone phase 3 in Western countries, the exclusion for that has been is very less. But still, now into the general public, that these are coming into the picture. So what is the endpoint? The endpoint is occurrence of casually related SAEs throughout the study duration for Covishield. Then for to evaluate the efficacy, we are going to see virologically confirmed RT-PCR for Covaxin. And secondary endpoints are like we have confirmed RT-PCR, asymptomatic people, symptomatic people, all immunogenicity is being evaluated in both the groups. So safety also is evaluated. That is by there is usually a 30-minute observation post-vaccination. We are going to see immediate AEs and also occurrence of respiratory disease disorders, AEs of special interest. All these are being looked up in Covaxin. So sample size for Covishield is 1600. This is a phase 2 and phase 3. Both phase 2 and phase 3 have been combined for Covishield. Sample size is 1600. For Covaxin, I think this is the largest study that is being conducted in India with a total sample size of 25,800. The phase 3 of Covaxin has started in 11th of November, and phase 2-3 of Covishield has started in 24th of August. So this is how based on the results or data that has been generated to phase 2, phase 3 of Covishield and phase 3 of Covaxin, the government has approved both Covishield and Covaxin for administration in emergency situations of pandemic times. So just a small summary about how this is a publication for this Pfizer thing, where it has been done in 43,448 participants with a 1:1 placebo. Which has showed 95% effectiveness in preventing COVID-19. It's just simple that you give a vaccine, you should not get COVID infection. You have a placebo, we are expecting you to get a COVID infection. So now this slides you think is not important. So this is how both the vaccines that are available in the market have been developed by the sponsors, which have been, the data has been submitted and the government has given approval for emergency use in the present pandemic conditions. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. Let's take questions at the end of the madam's presentation. Neelima ma'am, now it's a pleasure to invite you for the talk. You can share your presence. Sir, Prabhakar sir, you can stop sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, ma'am.
I would like to thank HRDA for giving me this opportunity. So today I'll be talking about COVID vaccines. The outline of the talk would be about the need for a vaccine, the various vaccine platforms available, the various approved vaccines currently worldwide, adverse effects, the myths and facts, and conclusion. So why do we need a vaccine, first of all? So now we are in the middle of the pandemic. This pandemic has substantial morbidity and mortality. As of today, there are about 98 million cases being reported worldwide with 2 million deaths. And India, about 10 million cases with 1.5 lakh deaths being reported. Till now, there is no effective treatment or prevention. And vaccination in general greatly reduces the burden of infection, and the benefits usually outweigh the risk. So hence, we need a vaccine currently. Now, what are the various strategies for vaccines? So we can divide like a classical platforms and the next generation platforms. Under classical platforms, we have the inactivated, live attenuated and protein subunit and virus-like particles. And another next generation platform, we have now the DNA, mRNA, and the virus vector vaccines. So I'll quickly run through what are these various methods, how we can use them. Like in inactivated virus vaccines, they're usually, the virus is being inactivated either physically or the chemically. Virus-like particle, they are nothing but structural viral proteins which are co-expressed to form the non-infectious particles. Protein subunits where you use the key proteins, they are manufactured in vitro in the bacteria, yeast, mammalian cells, or some insects. Coming to the newer or the next generation platforms, virus vectored, like the most commonly used vector is adenovirus. Even for the COVID vaccine, now we are using the adenovirus as the vector, where the gene encoding the pathogen is cloned either into a non-replicating vector or a replicating vector. So better if you go for a non-replicating vector. Coming to the DNA vaccine and our mRNA vaccines, the advantage of these vaccines are the rapid manufacture. You can manufacture them very rapidly. That's the reason why now we are having vaccine in a month, in a period of about 1.5 years. And DNA vaccine viral antigens, usually they're encoded by recombinant DNA plasmid, and then it is produced in the host cell by a sequential transcription and then translation process. Whereas in mRNA vaccine, they are synthesized by in vitro transcription, and they produce the antigens in the cytoplasm. So you're not entering the cell, hence there is no need or fear of alteration in DNA. Live attenuated vaccines are nothing but they're either attenuated by in vitro or in vivo, either by passage or reverse technologies. Now coming to the targets used in COVID-19 vaccines, as you all know, the most common target in most of the vaccines nowadays is S protein. It's nothing but a spike protein. This is a trimeric protein. What happens is this, it has a 2 subunits, S1. I will be going into the little more details because this is the commonly targeted protein in most of the vaccines we see nowadays. So S1 and S2 subunit it has. So you all know, I think this S protein will go and bind with the ACE2 receptors. ACE2 is nothing but angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptors. How does it bind? It binds with the help of the receptor binding domain with the S1 subunit. After it binds, before actually it is present in the form of pre-fusion. Then what happens? It binds, and then this S1 subunit is cleaved, and this S2 subunit, there is a transformation occurring, conformational change, and then it goes into post-fusion formation. And thus, this helps in binding to the receptors present in the host cell. So if this is being targeted, most of the studies show that neutralizing antibodies, vaccines should be able to produce antibodies which are specific. So most of the times it is, if in case of this COVID, it is neutralizing antibody. So it's found that it has, it will generate a good amount of neutralizing antibody against this proteins. Hence, most of the vaccines are being targeting this protein. So if you see the various platforms, you can also see the various manufacturing companies, like we have Moderna, we have Pfizer, we have AstraZeneca, which are using different platforms. Like Moderna is an mRNA. Out of these, Moderna and Pfizer are mRNA vaccines. AstraZeneca, it is a non-replicating adenovirus vector. It's a vector, basically. It's a non-replicating adenovirus vector. Now, this technology is being existent for many years. So it has been borrowed. Actually, it was developed for SARS-CoV virus. Now it has, this technology is borrowed, and hence we are using this now for the COVID vaccines too. So Covishield, which we are using nowadays, is based on this technology. And then we have an inactivated, where the virus is killed. We have and now in India, we have Covaxin, which is an inactivated virus. Coming to the advantages of various methods, if you see the DNA vaccines and the mRNA vaccine, the main advantage is you can manufacture them in a they are easily prepared because the technology is already available. So it is easy to prepare in a large scale. And the only disadvantage would be because since it's a very new in human use. I think this is the first time we're having it for human use during this COVID time. So the data, so safety still remains unknown. So we need a lot of studies on this. Now coming to the inactivated vaccines, the advantages, they're easily produced and they're stable. The disadvantages, you need a biosafety cabinet 3 level because you have to grow the pathogen. Subunit vaccines, they may protect the immunized animals from the infection. The disadvantage could be of like they have limited efficacy. And it also makes immune responses imbalanced. So to have a good response, you should also have a balance of these immunological response, T cell versus B cell immune responses. And coming to the vector vaccines, the advantages, it directly infects the antigen presenting cells. They are physically and genetically very stable. The disadvantage of this vector vaccine is they may induce prior immunity to the vector. Like for example, if you take the adenovirus, which we are now currently using for COVID vaccines, there are many people who are working on these adenovirus. It is Chinese, UK is working on this, China is working on this, but then China was using a different vector, adenovirus 5 vector. The problem with that was it also was showing some pre-existing immunity. Like for example, I told you, because they were working for the SARS coronaviruses already, so they have borrowed this technology. So we all know that most of the common cold, there are many viruses which usually cause this cold, and you already have some kind of immunity. Because of this, the immunological response was found to be reduced. So what this AstraZeneca has done was they have used, it's called as ChAdOx, or the Covishield is also called as ChAdOx vaccine. Instead of the humanized thing, they have used a chimpanzee, and then this gene was incorporated into it, and then it was transduced into the host for immunization. So with this, the immune response was found to be better. So how does immune response gets induced after you give a vaccine? So once you give a vaccine, it will go to the antigen presenting cell. This antigen presenting cell will activate CD4 as well as CD8 T cells. And then there is release of T helper 1 and T helper 2 cytokines. And then activation of T cells and B cells in combating the infection, killing the virus very successfully, and also creating the memory cells, which will teach the immune system, like in future, if you get encountered with the antigen, then they will produce a specific antibody, and then hence they protect you. This is how the vaccines act. Now coming to the global COVID vaccine landscape. So these are the various vaccines utilizing the different platforms which are in various preclinical and clinical development stage. Now, as of on January 21st, we have 40 vaccines which are in phase 1, 24 in phase 2, 20 in phase 3, and 8 which has been approved with like restricted use, and fully approved are 2 vaccines, and 1 was abandoned. That is, Australian vaccine was abandoned because they found that efficacy was not so good. Now, if you see the Indian landscape of COVID-19 vaccines, I have already enumerated the various platforms which we have, like mRNA, DNA vaccines, inactivated vaccines. So we are almost utilizing all of these platforms. So Covishield is a vector vaccine, Covaxin is an inactivated vaccine. Then we have Sputnik vaccine. Then we have mRNA, that is HGCO19 vaccine. Other vector vaccine like rabies is also being developed by Bharat Biotechnology, out of which Covaxin, this inactivated rabies vector, Sputnik V is with Dr. Reddy's laboratory, and R protein antigen based from Biological E. These are all from Hyderabad. So Hyderabad is also considered as a hub for this vaccine development. Sorry. The vaccines which are pipeline in India, which will be approved in the next few months, are these. That is the Cadila vaccine, the Sputnik vaccine, and the R protein vaccine of Biological E. Sorry. Okay. Now, what are the approved vaccines worldwide? We have 9 vaccines which are being approved. These are Moderna vaccine, Pfizer vaccine, then we have AstraZeneca vaccine, Sputnik, and there is one, it's not yet named, but it has been developed by Sinopharma company, and the country of origin is China. And then there are other vaccines, including Covaxin. So out of these, in India, we have AstraZeneca and Covaxin. So these are the other countries where, if you see, like for mRNA and AstraZeneca and Moderna has been approved in most of the other countries too. So coming to Covishield, because these are the two vaccines which are approved in India, I will go into little details about these two vaccines. So Covishield is a Chadox vaccine. Why you call it as Chadox? It is a chimpanzee adenovirus vector developed by Oxford University. And here this Covaxin is BBV152. The technique used here, this is a viral vector vaccine, this is a whole virion, but it's inactivated. Developed by Serum Institute. Covishield is developed by Serum Institute, Covaxin by Bharat Biotech. Covaxin uses some adjuvants, whereas you don't use, because the technology demands, and then Covishield doesn't have any adjuvants. So both the vaccines, you require 2 doses of 0.5 ml each, about 4 weeks apart between 2 doses. And the route of administration is intramuscular in both the cases. And they have included about 18 to 55 years of age group in their trials. What happened? Yeah. Most of the minor side effects reported were from both the vaccines, with both the vaccines was pain, fever, chills, myalgias, headache, etc. There were no major adverse effects reported. It's contraindicated in anaphylaxis. Both of them have to be refrigerated between 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. With this storage condition, the shelf life would be around 6 months. There is no data on immunocompromised pregnant individuals, and in blood thin disorders, you will have to use with caution. So this is a Pfizer vaccine where it has shown a remarkable efficacy of about 95%. And the Moderna vaccine also showed efficacy of about 94.1%. So these are not currently available in India because of their stringent storage conditions. They require, Pfizer requires -80 or -70 and Moderna is -20. So with this distribution of vaccines to remote areas like in India, it's very difficult. We can manage only in the cities, but into other places, it's very, very difficult. So with this, the current Covaxin and Covishield are the better vaccines for us. Now coming to the adverse effects following inoculation. So they are classified as very common, common, uncommon, rare, and very rare based on their prevalence. So WHO cause specific definitions of these AEFIs are, it could be related, vaccine product related reaction, or quality defect because of any defect in the qualities. For example, there is a polio virus where it has to be inactivated. If a particular lot was not inactivated properly, then that could result in a paralytic polio. Then it could be related with the errors in immunization. So the transmission can occur because of a contaminated multi-dose vial, or some could be an anxiety related reactions where you see like vasovagal syncope attacks, and some coincidental events which are not related with the vaccine at all. Like you see a fever has been reported and then you isolate parasite, malarial parasite in blood. That's nothing to do with the vaccine. That could be a coincidental event. Now I would like to compare the 4 vaccines here. That's Covishield, Covaxin, Pfizer and Moderna with the adverse events reported with these vaccines. But since Covaxin, as far as I know, the data has not yet been published. So I'm not putting the percentages there here. So you can see the side effects like injection site pain, tenderness, headache, fatigue, the percentages are a little high with the Pfizer and Moderna. That's because of its robust immune response, so nothing to worry. Apart from this, other side effects like myalgia, malaise, pyrexia, chills, arthralgia, nausea are also reported. So with the vaccine in hand, so how to go about it? So it's very difficult to vaccinate entire population. So you'll have to prioritize the vaccines. This is a vaccine paradigm. Once you have a vaccine, you will have to prioritize the vaccine, like whom you will vaccinate. And then you will consider in the next phase the other. First of all, our Ministry of Health has issued some guidelines. That is, in the first phase, we are going to concentrate on healthcare workers, frontline workers, and all individuals who are more than 50 years of age. This particular group, also they are going to divide into 2 phases. In the first phase, they will be vaccinating individuals who are more than 60, and then they will consider between 50 to 60 subsequently. And those who are less than 50, if they have comorbidities, then they can be vaccinated. So then in the next phase, you will consider the other groups of vaccination, and then you will go for mass vaccination. Now coming to the myths and facts. So many have this feeling that whether COVID vaccine is safe or unsafe. They have that it is unsafe because it has been rushed. The vaccine is in the market within 1.5 year or 1 year period. So actually, a traditional vaccine development takes about 10 to 15 years, which was well illustrated by Dr. Prabhakar. So I'm not going into those details. But if you see with the COVID vaccine, there was an accelerated response. Like we are almost with, they have started in the month of May, and now we are already, the vaccine is available in the market. So it doesn't mean that they have skipped all these process. They have followed each and every step. They have not skipped their process, not a shortcut method. Only thing is there was an overlapping. That means they were simultaneously started phase 1, phase 2. There was an overlapping schedule. They were simultaneously looking into different phases. That's the reason why it has been cut down. It has been developed in a very short period. Not only this, whatever I've already enumerated the various vaccine platforms. Whatever I said, they are all nothing new except for these mRNA and DNA vaccines. Rest all are very much in existence. Like they're not new. They have been there for the past 40 to 70 years. So with the available vaccine platforms, and once there was an outbreak, I think the outbreak started somewhere in the month of November in China, late November or early December. And in a month period, they have already shared the entire genetic sequence of that virus. So with that, it was very helpful for us to develop the vaccine. That could be also one of the reasons. And then lot of funding, resource funding. So many agencies, the governments are willing to fund on this because of the availability of a lot of resources also. We are having a vaccine at a very early stage. So yeah, and also this mRNA and DRNA vaccine, I already said, they're very faster. You can prepare, manufacturing is very easy, and you can prepare large quantities very easily. And also one more reason could be that the companies have already begun the vaccine manufacturing even much before the FDA approval. So once the approvals were ready, once the approval have approved, then they are already ready with the vaccine. That also could be the reason why we are fast. Now, is it mandatory to get vaccinated? So the answer could be no, it's not mandatory. It's purely voluntary. But then healthcare workers are at high risk of developing this infection. Thus, this vaccination definitely protects against development of the severe disease. So what is the benefit of taking COVID-19 vaccine? So definitely it protects against severe disease. And if you are symptomatic, if you take vaccine, you might become asymptomatic. So development of symptomatic infection will be prevented. Yeah, definitely there are no much foolproof studies to prove that it does not protect against transmission of disease. I mean, vaccines does not protect against transmission of disease. So healthcare worker, that's the reason why, though you're vaccinated, you will have to comply with your infection control precautions at all times. That is your SMS, sanitization, masking, social distancing has to be followed. So most of the vaccines, whatever till now we have discussed, the route of vaccine of all these is intramuscular, and it is in the deltoid. How many doses to be given? It's 2 doses, 0.5 ml, and with about 4 weeks apart. I think Pfizer vaccines 21 days, rest of the vaccines are 4 weeks apart, 28 days. Is the vaccine necessary for a COVID, a person who has recovered from COVID? So does he need a vaccine? The answer would be yes, because we do not know the duration which has been, the duration of protection offered by natural immunity. It's not the case like in chickenpox, if you are affected, then you have a lifelong immunity. So you require a lot of data on this, but still this, whatever studies we have till now, the data says that it is not for a longer duration. The natural immunity doesn't last much longer. Hence, vaccination is recommended for high-risk frontline healthcare workers. And when to take vaccine? After you recover, when to take? So it can be anything between 1 to 3 months following the recovery. So next is children and pregnant women. Do they need to get the vaccine? So currently the vaccine is prioritized only to frontline healthcare worker. Most of the, rightly we have these 2 vaccines, Covishield and Covaxin. So those trials have not included this population. So we don't have data on this. But if a frontline pregnant woman can be offered this, weighing her risk and benefit ratio, and she can take the vaccine and with the consent. And children less than 16 years of age, no, they don't have to be, they're not eligible for vaccination currently. I think Pfizer is studying on children between 12 to 16 years of age. I think in some time we'll have the published data on that. But rest of the other vaccines, you need to have data on this group, particular age group. How long will the vaccine protect from an infection? So the data on duration of protection is not yet available. It is expected it would last somewhere between 6 months to 1 year. So ongoing trials will provide the data in coming years. Is it mandatory to follow the safety precautions after vaccination? Yes, all standard and transmission-based precautions has to be followed, like wearing a mask, hand hygiene, physical distancing should be strictly followed, at least this year. Can other vaccines be given along with COVID vaccine? The answer is yes. If you are going to give like inactivated or subunit vaccine, then it can be safely administered, but at least actually there is no data which show that COVID vaccine can be administered simultaneously with the other vaccine. Only for that reason, we are keeping a gap of 2 weeks. So you can, once the data is there, I think there should not be any problem in administering it simultaneously too. But since because of the lack of data, it's better to follow the 2 weeks period. Where you're giving a live vaccine, then you'll have to give a time gap of about 4 weeks. But where you have to give an emergency vaccine like tetanus, rabies, then you can give simultaneously. You don't have to defer them for want of giving this COVID vaccine. Can persons who have undergone, like they have received convalescent plasma or monoclonal antibody treatment for COVID-19 infection, do they need to take vaccination? Yes, they can take vaccination, but the vaccination has to be deferred for at least 90 days to have an effective response. Is natural immunity safer? I think many people might be having this doubt in mind. If you're already infected, then natural immunity is safer than going for a vaccine. Of course, some studies have shown that natural immunity lasts longer, but for that you will have to suffer, and you have to survive the disease also. Whereas with COVID-19, the natural immune response after a mild case was found to be very short-lived. It's much shorter than expected from the vaccine. And to wait to reach natural immunity, then you will need to have many more lockdowns and millions of people would die in this process and many millions would also suffer. So to avoid all this, it's better to go for a vaccine. People with underlying conditions, should they get vaccinated? Or yes, they need to get vaccinated. Those with the underlying, actually these are the vulnerable group, like people with comorbid conditions, immunocompromised, elderly people, these are all vulnerable people. But most of the trials have not included them. I think ChAdOx has, our coefficient vaccine has completely excluded. So we don't have as such data on this group, but as such, they are the vulnerable. So the risk is very high if they acquire COVID-19 infection. Hence, they need to be vaccinated. Do people with suppressed immune system need vaccination? Then answer is yes, they definitely need vaccination because the vaccine will not hurt you. Except for live virus, any vaccine can be given in immunocompromised patients. But the immune response could be little lesser when compared to the other group of individuals. But it is something is better than nothing. Still, they will have some protection from COVID-19. Some people might be having in mind whether this mRNA vaccines are whether they are safe or not. So yes, they are safe. They don't, I think some might be having whether they alter our DNA and something like that. So they don't alter the genetic makeup. How is that they are acting is they penetrate and introduce the mRNA sequence into the host immune cell cytoplasm. They're not going into the nucleus. And then they instruct the cell to synthesize this target protein. It's only that particular, usually the spike protein. It's not the entire virus for the immune system to act. For COVID-19 vaccine, as we are told, it's a spike protein which is excreted either locally or on the surface of the cells to stimulate a specific immune response. And after this, that mRNA will get degraded. So it's not there in the body at all after a few days. So there's no effect on host DNA. So they are safe. Are these vaccines effective against the mutant strains? Yeah, then I would say it's still doubtful. Now, only with time we will be having the answer. Currently, I can't comment on this. But we have three kinds of mutations being reported, one in the UK and then South Africa, and recently in January from Brazil and Japan. So out of these three, UK variant, the mutation which was found with the UK variant was found to be effective, whereas those which were reported from South Africa and Brazil and Japan, they showed not just increased transmissibility, but efficacy was found to be little low, but only the time will answer these questions. We have several unanswered questions also, like the durability of protection, we don't know. Efficacy in high-risk groups is still unanswered as they were not included in most of the trials. Prevention of asymptomatic infection and prevention of transmission, yes, it's not yet known. Efficacy against variants and long-term safety. These all only time can answer all these questions. So take-home message, yes, it's vaccination, it is safe, and we have effective available vaccines. Yes, on long-term effects, we need more data. And because vaccine is there, we cannot regard other preventive measures. We have to comply with those preventive measures. So if you see this is a Swiss cheese pandemic defense. So if you have effective preventive measures with effective viral screening and fast vaccination, so though there are mutant strains, the pandemic control has overwhelmed this mutant strain. So, but on the other hand, if you have a relaxed preventive measures, if you think that there's a vaccination, then we don't have to follow any preventive measures. We don't have to take them. Insufficient viral screening and slow vaccination, then the mutant strains will dominate finally. They will overrun the pandemic control and finally affecting the society. So with this, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. So probably you have answered all the questions by your presentation.